What is going on, Benzinga Nation? And welcome back. We've done so many of these biotech webinars because you guys keep asking for them. So you know we have to continue delivering them to you. There's so many things to talk about when it comes to the healthcare and biotech space. I mean, we've all kind of heard stories of, the FDA needing approval on certain type of treatment that's going on. We've all heard of the Ozempic and different ways to have that. And of course, you got to go ahead and take care of your body as well. And we have a lot of different guests here to attack those type of companies and those type of angles. And as always, if you have any questions, let us know in the chat. I'll do my best to bring them on. And let's go ahead and get this party on the road. First up is going to be Mark GOLDSTON, who is the executive chairman of Beachbody, which is a ticker of BODI. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, Z. Nice to see you again.
It's great. And look, you're making me jealous. First, you show off your biceps. Then you're in the gym, making me look weak out here, man.
Hey, man, it's early in the morning out here on the West Coast. I'm catching you before we start the workout.
I love it. I love it. What better way to represent the brand and what you stand for than to actually live by it? But hey, for the folks that for some reason might not be familiar with Beachbody, give me a quick brief overview, man.
Beachbody is essentially the quintessential fitness nutrition company. I mean, our mission is to let people be the best version of themselves that they can be, which involves exercise, certainly involves nutrition. We've got meal plans. So the idea is, look, just be the best version of who you are. Yeah. You want to lose 5 pounds, you want to lose 20 pounds, you want to improve your cardio, you want to start eating better, and you don't know how to do it. We're sort of the one-stop solution. There's people that do components of this, but nobody really pulls it together in a total solution. In fact, when we sell it, we actually call it a total solution pack, because we've got you covered on all these elements.
Believe it or not, I got a standing desk about 4 months ago and a treadmill underneath it as well. And somehow I've gained a pound. I know you want me to believe it's a muscle.
It's muscle, man.
Everyone says, but my pants disagree with you. But you mentioned the total package. So many folks know Beachbody when it comes to P90X or the other cool workouts that we've seen in the morning. I was on Amazon, believe it or not. I was able to go ahead and kind of get this because I wanted to check it out. You've got your own nutritional set of things as well. Right now, nutrition industry is about, 164 billion, give or take. And your company has a lot of different products out there. And I will say this, I'm glad you have the cookies and cream because that's the one I had to go ahead and snack. So tell me about this. Tell me how this part of the business is going.
So Shakeology, which is what you just held up, is our superfood. And it's a very large business. For the most part, it's been sold only within our membership network that we've got. We recently started selling it on Amazon, as you saw. In fact, we reported a 50% quarter-on-quarter increase in our Amazon sales. But we have a total range of nutrition products. So Shakeology has got all of the elements in there that you need for nutrition, gives you energy. We've also got pre and post workout called Energize. We have a great collagen product. We have something called First Thing, Last Thing, which you start your day with, end your day with to help you sleep, give you more energy in the morning, better sleep at night. We've got Beach Bars, which are protein bars. So we've got a $250 million plus nutritional supplement business, which is formidable in its own right. And we're just now starting to make it available outside of sort of our membership network. But we have got top of the market quality in terms of products, ingredients, and more importantly, they're made for everyone. They're not just made for people who are heavy workout folks, et cetera. This is something that can supplement your daily life. And we focus on that in our total program.
I have never felt more alpha than when I can walk around my house when no one's watching and I can just do this. You know what I mean? I've never felt more alpha. So I thank you for letting me have the opportunity to do that. But when it comes to kind of accessibility, look, there are a lot of competitors that I'm sure you have in this space, right? So how is your company working on making sure that fitness is more accessible to the common man and woman in America?
Well, that's a great question. The history of this company, Carl Deichler, who's our CEO and co-founder, he's been doing this for 25 years. I mean, he created the whole infomercial industry with all these amazing programs. So this company has tremendous history in fitness. And what we used to do was to sell videos and DVDs, P90X, Insanity, Body Beast, 21 Day Fix. You'd buy it, you'd own the DVDs. Well, maybe we'd hear from you again, maybe we wouldn't. But it was a one-time purchase. Then we moved into the subscription business. Now we have, 1.3 million subscribers who buy that. But we moved away from the ability to buy individual programs. We've just now started to do that again, but in modernization, we've turned it into a digital purchase. So you basically get it. You can access it forever. You just come back through our app in order to access what you've purchased, which, by the way, gives us an ongoing relationship with the customer, which we did not have with the DVD. So now we have a hybrid model, Z. You can subscribe. We got a library of 130 titles. We cover everything from core, strength, you name it, cardio. For the very rank beginner, we actually have a program called For Beginners Only, all the way up to P90X. So we are essentially, to use an expression, the Netflix of fitness as relates to subscription. And we're now making numerous of those titles available to people for $59.95 to pay one time and own it essentially for the rest of your days. So we've basically tried to cover the genre, to cover the skill level, the level of commitment you want to put in. You want to put in 10 minutes a day, we've got you covered. You want to work out for 90 minutes, we got you covered. So we really have put together a holistic approach to fitness and wellness to pull you through your journey.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, hey, we've got a beginner section all the way up to P90X. Now I feel like a fool for doing P90X as the first thing I did 10 years ago. But, you do got to work your way up. And I'm glad that you have different, because we all have different body types, different body shapes, different internal body metrics as well.
We look at it almost like a ski hill, right? You got the greens, you got blues, you got blacks, double blacks. We have this same range within our fitness library.
Now, I want to talk about any trends you're seeing, and then I want to talk about your pipeline real quick as well. So tell me any trends you're seeing in the healthcare sector. And I'll go ahead and point out, we talked about Ozempic last time. Now you've got different companies that are participating in this as well, talking about how they're losing weight. But you tell me I gain muscle. I'm saying people are saying that you lose muscle. That's why you're losing weight when it comes to drugs like Ozempic. Your thoughts there?
So some hard numbers. 145 million Americans are classified as being overweight. 75 million are obese. We only have 210 million adults in America. So the numbers are staggering. The Ozempics of the world, the GLP-1 drugs, look, for people who can't lose weight on their own or want to do it on an accelerated basis or are diabetic, it's a great solution. The downside of that, because you want to get people to get into the zone where they can actually start to exercise, especially if they're clinically overweight, is you lose lean muscle mass when you take those drugs. It's a known side effect. So we consider ourselves to be sort of the adjunct to that. Start those drugs, terrific. It's good for you. Get your weight down, get your blood sugar down, but you've got to build back your lean muscle mass. So we become somebody who can be a solution for you at home. You don't have to go to a gym. You find yourself 10 to 40 minutes a day in your house with a library like we've got. We can create a great portion of the suite in taking care of your health and wellness. So I think it's great that people have decided to use these pharmaceuticals to address the obesity problem, because it will make us a healthier nation. But once you get past 40, you do not want to be losing lean muscle mass. Your strength, your balance, that's what prevents people from falling, from having injuries. So we're big believers in getting your weight down to wherever you want it to be to make you feel good and be healthy. But we want to keep you as strong as possible. And most importantly, you've got to maintain cardiovascular health. If you don't exercise and all you do is lose weight, you may be better off than you were when you were heavy, but you're far from healthy. So we've got the meal plans, we've got the nutritional supplements, and we've got the exercise, which are great things to do in concert with a GLP-1 program.
I love it. Kind of like a one-stop shop, A to Z, when it comes to healthy weight loss and, muscle building as well. Real quick before I let you go, anything that's in the pipeline that you want to tell our viewers about?
Well, we are, listen, we've got a tremendous R&D bench in nutrition, and you will be seeing us looking at that category as a major growth opportunity for us. Because listen, at one point, this company did almost $800 million just in nutrition. So we have tremendous runway there. We're working on 2 great new fitness programs. One will be coming out very shortly. Another one comes out more towards the end of the year. And we continue to augment with updates throughout for all of the programs that we've got in our members. So we are, like you said, we are the one-stop shop for fitness, nutrition, and wellness. The Beachbody company has a long heritage. We now go by BODI, which stands for Beachbody On-Demand Interactive. And that's why we changed our ticker symbol to be BODI.
That part I did not know. I learned something new every day. I'll tell you what, I'm glad that gym not just has great equipment, but also great Wi-Fi. Love that. And hey, I'll have my people reach out to your people. Maybe we could do a sponsored content segment of me losing weight using your products. How about that?
I go, Z. Don't forget the weightlifting.
There you go. I'll get back in the gym. I'll get back in the gym.
Always great to see you, Z. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. You bet. That is Mark, who is the executive chairman of the Beachbody company. Ticker on the NYSE is BODI. Again, don't just have the media aspects when it comes to losing weight, building muscle, but also the nutrition aspect as well. I'm telling you, these cookies and cream, Shakeology, I like it. All right, let's keep the party going. We're going to have Tony join us here in a couple of moments. Love his insights when it comes to the healthcare sector and everything else that he does. But before we get to Tony, I had a chance to catch up with InMed on a conversation earlier. Here it is. Hitting the conversation with Eric Adams, who is the CEO of InMed Pharmaceuticals. Ticker on the NASDAQ is INM. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. There's so much for us to get into, but let's kind of give the folks at home a quick overview of what InMed Pharmaceuticals does.
Sure. Well, we work with a class of compounds called cannabinoids that can be found in many different places in nature. And the interesting thing about these compounds is that they are traditionally very safe. Interestingly, they get into the brain, which is not always easy to do with pharmaceutical drugs. And they have a wide effect in the human body. And so we're leveraging on these naturally occurring ones. We're modifying them so that we can enhance their effects, either from a efficacy standpoint or safety standpoint. And we're developing them in diseases with very high unmet medical needs. So that's the foundation of InMed Pharmaceuticals, your classical pharmaceutical research and development company, and we're advancing these compounds.
And you've got several parts of the business. One of them you just kind of mentioned. The one that I really want to focus on today is the Alzheimer's research. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, it's very interesting. We have identified a compound that we anticipated would have some important neuroprotective effects. And so we worked with neurons from the brain, and we tried to find a specific class of cannabinoids or a molecule that would provide neural protection. What does that mean? That means preventing the neurons from normal death, but also if they're diseased, from preventing them from disease-related death. And this is an effect of cannabinoids that's well understood. But what we found is that different cannabinoids work differently in different parts of the body. So what works, for instance, in our macular degeneration in the eye is not the one that we found to be working in the brain. So it takes a lot of teasing out to figure out which ones are going to work where. And what we found along the way is not only are we getting the anticipated neural protection, but there's a number of other things going on as well. We are decreasing neuroinflammation, and neuroinflammation is part of the pathology of dementia. We are helping the neurons, which are these cells that have fingers that talk to each other. That's where we get all of our thought. They actually help these grow, because in the diseases, in dementia, these things start to shrink and pull away from each other, and they can't communicate as well with each other. So you can imagine that leads to a pretty bad outcome from a cognition standpoint. What we're seeing with our compound is that these start to regrow, and both in normal and in diseased models. So we're seeing some very interesting things, all related to the neurons themselves, which essentially is the underlying problem with any dementia, and especially Alzheimer's. We're seeing some traditional things. We're seeing some amyloid beta reductions. Amyloid beta is a plaque that kind of gunks up the system and prevents communication between the neurons. There's drugs that are approved to do that. We do that as well, but we don't think that's the most interesting or important effect of our compound.
I've been trying to learn more about the brain and the neurons aspect, especially in today's world where it's filled with dopamine, right? So I'm trying to study, hey, how is me doing X impacting me long-term with Y? So it's fascinating to kind of hear you talk about the communication between the brain as well. You mentioned your approach is a little different. So what makes InMed's approach to Alzheimer's different from other treatment options in this field?
Yeah, so most of the focus has been on amyloid beta reduction up to this point. So, hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent bringing drugs to market that can reduce the amyloid beta. And again, this is a plaque that kind of gunks up the system. It slows down the ability for these neurons to talk to each other. And they effectively remove that. It was anticipated that, hey, if we get rid of that, we could potentially solve Alzheimer's, because they noticed that in dementia patients and Alzheimer's patients, there's a very high level, an abnormally high level of this plaque. They've been able to get rid of it, but they've just not seen the results that you would hope to see. So they've been able to slow down the disease progression to some extent, but they haven't halted it, and they've certainly not been able to reduce it. What's interesting about our approach is, number one, that's not the primary focus. We do see some amyloid beta reduction, but we don't think that's the most important thing. It's really improving the health of the neurons, reducing the disease-causing inflammation, helping them regrow, and protecting them in the brain. And it's done through a couple of different pathways. So, people would anticipate that it's going through the cannabinoid receptor pathway, the CB1 and the CB2 pathway. That's what this class of drugs will do. But we've also found out that it goes through a different pathway as well, and that's called a PPAR pathway. And what's interesting about PPAR is there have been PPAR drugs on the market that treat diabetes. Okay, well, that's interesting. And there's always been a link between diabetes and Alzheimer's. And, we haven't completely figured that out, we meaning science in general. But all the large companies are kind of looking at that possible link, because it's known that people with diabetes are much more likely to develop Alzheimer's. And they're trying to figure that out. So here we have a drug that provides all this neural protection that we anticipated, but through different pathways, maybe doing other things as well. So it's really this multifactorial approach that, could lead to possible better outcomes in these patients. Not just slowing the progression, but possibly halting it. And if we can regrow these neurons, you can think that, possibly we can reverse some of the detrimental effects of the disease. It's early stages, but that's kind of what the thinking is right now. And, we've engaged a number of external experts to help us understand what we're seeing in the data, and try to figure out what more we should be doing to better understand the path forward.
I know personally, just working here, it takes a group of individuals to have the execution be perfect. And I bring that up because InMed appointed Dr. David G. Morgan, who's a leading Alzheimer's expert, to the company's scientific advisory board. How does this appointment play into the strategy you just talked about?
Well, we are cannabinoid experts. That's where we came from. So developing cannabinoids as pharmaceuticals is in our DNA. We are not Alzheimer's experts. We have been successful in building a set of data that looks exceptionally interesting from our perspective, but we need to better understand that. So as I mentioned, we're reaching out to external individuals, be it in academia, be it in big pharma, wherever these people are, to try and understand what we're seeing. And Dr. Morgan is been an addition to that group. He joined as a scientific advisory board member, and already we can start to feel his impact as we try to not only understand what the data is telling us, but what more we should be doing. Which additional questions should we be asking of this compound in order to lay out the best pathway towards human trials? Because what we're doing now, you want to make sure you're doing everything you can to support what your clinical trial program is going to look like. And you need to do that work now. You don't want to wait and find something out later and then have to go back and start over or redo additional trials. So he's had a big impact helping us understand that and helping us lay out a new pathway.
And then last question for me, what else are you focused on in your pharma pipeline that you wanted to share with us? Maybe something that I didn't get a chance to bring up here today.
Yeah, so we do have another drug candidate in macular degeneration. It's INM-089. This is another proprietary small molecule that we're developing. And that falls very well into this neuroprotective angle, this neuroprotective understanding we have of this class of compounds. We previously had a glaucoma program, but we think that this new compound not only has a much better effect at the back of the eye, but can address some diseases where there continues to be a high unmet medical need such as dry age-related macular degeneration. It's actually 90% of the macular degeneration market falls into the dry versus the wet. So there's not a lot of products that are approved for it. The ones that are approved are not really performing that well. The adoption has been very low because of that.
Yeah.
And we're seeing this ability again of these drugs to protect the neurons from cell death, and that's what leads to blindness. So we're doing additional studies to fully understand what the benefit could be. That's going to inform us as to how to design clinical trials, and so we're marching that forward as well. We have one other program where we completed phase 2 human clinical studies. That's INM 755. We conducted a study in a very devastating skin condition called epidermolysis bullosa. What we learned from that study is that this drug has very good potential in itch, in treating severe chronic itch. And we don't, if you haven't suffered from this, it's not something you think a lot about. We think of itch as a mosquito bite. We think of itch as poison ivy. But you got to, put yourself in the mindset of having this every day, all day long, and it's all you can think about because it's so severe. It's a big problem, and there's not a lot of drugs out there for it. So we think that this skin cream that we developed holds potential there. We are engaging with companies to try and find a better home for that. I think the money that we have to invest in R&D is going to be focused on the Alzheimer's and the macular degeneration at this point. So it's an interesting asset, something that hopefully we can put in the right hands and see that progress.
All right. Well, there you have it. You've got a lot of things you're working on. Really interested in the Alzheimer's part, as you mentioned yourself as well. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Great talking to you.
That was Eric Adams, who is the CEO of InMed Pharmaceuticals. Ticker on the NASDAQ is INM. All right, a lot of great things happening there. Appreciate you guys for watching, and thank you for his time. We've got Tony back on with us. I mentioned we had a great time at the conversations he led in the healthcare summit that we did earlier this year, so we had to bring Tony back. Tony, how's it going?
It's good, Zunaid. How are you?
Doing great, man. Good to see you back, and you've got a lot of great insights. As a matter of fact, I believe you've got a good interview coming up with Lance, so the floor is yours, man.
I would say so. Thanks so much. All right, folks, I'm thrilled to bring on our next guest. He is the CEO of BioRestorative Therapies. Quality of care is top of mind for this company, so I'm really thrilled to bring them to you, especially when it comes to chronic back pain, as well as metabolic disorders like obesity and diabetes, which are both trending as of late due to the uptick of medications that are coming out in this space. So please, without further ado, bring on Lance ALSTODT.
Hi, Tony.
Hey, Lance, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling in from Melville, New York, Long Island, right outside of Manhattan, just about 25 miles due east. So we're enjoying this lovely, hot, humid weather out in New York today. But it's better than the alternative, so I'll take it.
Well, I'm always thrilled to talk to a fellow New Yorker. Let's tee off with a little bit about the company. Give us a quick overview of BioRestorative and its mission.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. So BioRestorative Therapies is a emerging growth biopharma technology company. We are ticker symbols BRTX. We trade on the NASDAQ. We have 3 primary areas of focus, which are in various stages of development. So we have preclinical, clinical, and a commercial stage operation. We have preclinical focus in metabolic health. As you said, there is an uptick in medicines that are coming out right now to manage type 2 diabetes and obesity, hypertension, and other metabolic related diseases. We prosecute those diseases through a cellular solution. It's an allogeneic cell-based therapy using our thermostem program, or our brown fat. So it's brown adipose tissue. We have amazing results through this program preclinically in animal models through collaborations that we've done with University of Utah. And we've published a lot of this data. It's been out there. we're talking about some licensing agreements going forward, and we can touch upon that a little bit later. But that's our preclinical program. Our clinical stage program is what you referred to as spine, but we kind of think about it more broadly in terms of musculoskeletal health, because the technology can be leveraged across a variety of areas that are avascular within the body, inclusive of the spine. Right now, we're totally engaged in a phase 2 clinical trial for chronic lumbar disc disease under the auspices of the FDA. It's a 99-patient prospective randomized double-blinded controlled study, the best of its kind. We've published some preliminary blinded data on 4 patients that we've treated that was quite amazing. We saw a very clear signal between those that we believe received the drug candidate versus those that received the control. Again, it was blinded, but you could see that there was quite a signal given the randomization. So we're in the process of enrolling patients, treating patients at one of our, one of 15 clinical sites across the country, at all top-notch hospital systems and clinics that are very well known for musculoskeletal health. Now, this technology, as I said, is leveraged across avascular zones in the body. So it's not just spine, but it's hips, it's knees, it's shoulders, it's wrists, it's extremities. It's wherever there is an avascular zone where it's very difficult to promote healing, to remodel cells. And our technology, which is an autologous-based cell solution, brings a hypoxically cultured cell, 40 million of them, combined with an autologous platelet lysate, which is a carrier, to really help stimulate, proliferate cells and heal those troubled areas within the body. And what we're talking about really is pain and improvement of function within the body. Our last and I think really exciting program that we're focused on is our commercial stage, which is a biocosmeceutical technology. So we have a product offering right now just for the face. It's a topical for cosmetic use only product that we sell to Cartessa, who's our partner. Cartessa and BioRestorative announced a large multi-year exclusive agreement for this one product. We're already in development for generation 2. We're already in discussions on a hair product and a variety of other products to really bolster that offering, if you will, and provide a more comprehensive solution to that end user, which are the professional set of cosmetic surgeons and estheticians and spas, med spas, and so forth. So we're really excited about that. And what's unique, I would say, about our company in that lineage of thinking is, here we are, this micro cap emerging growth company with these preclinical and clinical stage development companies that's really being supported not only by the capital markets, but by a commercial stage operation that has very strong revenue prospects and very strong margin prospects on those revenues to help offset those costs related to the expensive nature of running FDA trials. So we're not completely dependent on the capital markets, which is really exciting. I find that being a small, tightly held, small float company with only 6.7 million shares outstanding, with this kind of dynamic of nitro and glycerol coming together, it could be somewhat of an explosive outlook.
That's great to hear. And one of the good things about being based in New York, we have the Hospital of Special Services here in New York. When you talk about spinal care and hip care, I know they took care of my mom 2 years ago. Is New York the place to be for a company like BioRestorative?
On many levels, it is, just because of the expertise around the clinical practices. But what you'll find is that cell therapies are being done outside of the U.S. in a pretty thoughtful, deliberate, and mature way. This is not new to the world. It'll be new to the U.S. because of how we're regulated, and I think we're regulated appropriately as opposed to some of the folks outside of the US. But I will tell you that the quality of care that's being done through cell therapies is outstanding in many countries outside the US, and some of which we're exploring in terms of developing some of our technologies, both from a clinical perspective as well as licensing agreements to start to monetize some of our programs. But New York, I believe, to be the epicenter around a lot of clinical practice. And we're fortunate, for example, to have a member of Northwell on our advisory board, who is he runs spine medicine at Northwell. They're in our backyard. They're the largest employer of people here in the state of New York. They're the largest hospital system in the country. So we're very fortunate to have that. We also have an advisor in our board who runs spine surgery at HSS, to your point. His name's Harvinder Sandhu. He's a great guy. He strongly believes in surgery, but also alternatives to surgery like regenerative medicine. In fact, some of these large hospital systems over time, who used to be exclusively focused on surgery, have now morphed into more of an interdisciplinary approach to spine health, or orthopedic health. So they'll have a variety of different disciplines. They come together, they bring best in class practice, and regenerative medicine is really on the forefront of a lot of their focus for a whole host of reasons. We probably don't have a lot of time to get into that, but it's just a unique situation where we're sitting kind of in the epicenter of all of these different hospital systems here in New York, as well as having access to some of the best outside of the US too.
If you're just tuning in, BRTX shares are currently up. If you're checking your ticker and Benzinga Pro, talk to us a little bit about the past Q1, Lance. What were some of the highlights and big takeaways?
Sure. So look, I think in terms of highlights, we had a bit of I would say a quiet quarter, which is always a good thing, nothing disruptive from the standpoint of operations. But, I would say that a 30% improvement in operating profit is a very healthy reportable event. So I would say that would probably be one of our highlights. And I would say that's due to a much more efficient operating structure. And what goes without saying is that we were able to take all three of our programs really hitting on all cylinders. Historically, we've been focused on our spine trial. And now that we've evolved, and we've evolved both from a human and capital resource perspective, we're able to now really prosecute and develop all three of the programs that we have simultaneously, bringing forth really meaningful value enhancing catalysts to the forefront. And I think that is what's highlighted most within our quarter, is all of those activities, on top of which a company like ours having this commercial operation to help offset capital markets expenses related to our clinical development or our investable costs, is a very unique capability. Now, to put an exclamation point on all of this, it's rare that you see a company of our size that's trading below cash with a very strong cash balance of approximately $17 million. And just when we see that number, we want to think about what's the relevance of that number. 17 million for us is one measure versus 17 million for another company. For us, it's a tremendous amount of capital that takes us pretty deep into the end of the year for 2025. And it also represents more than what we would need to prosecute a lot of our strategic goals that would interpret or interpolate into some very meaningful value enhancing catalysts and inflection points within the company.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. You mentioned a few licensing agreements before. Who are the key players in the regenerative medicine industry? Who's the competition? And who are
in the US, we don't find that there's many that are in competition. In fact, we don't think of it from a competitive standpoint. This is a nascent industry that is going to really explode, because we're starting to see it explode outside of the US in terms of, we all wish anyone in cell therapy the best. We want that industry. We want the industry to explode. We want to be part of it. There's enough for all of us to take advantage of the lucrative opportunity involved in this. It's really by indication. So there are companies that are focused on spine. You have Dysgenics, you have Mesoblast. We wish them the best. We think our technology is novel, unique, proprietary, and different. Therefore, we have a different view as to the capabilities of our technology. We feel really strongly about what we're doing. Obviously, this is not an opportunity to talk negative about any of our competitors per se, but we feel like we've got a very unique product capability that will, we're starting to see data coming out of our trial. Now it's blinded, but it's very clear that there's a signal, and that signal would suggest, massive improvement in terms of pain scores and function-related scores to the tune of 80, 90%, when the FDA is only asking us to get to a 30% threshold of reduction of pain and increase in function. So we're starting to see the power and the miracle around these hypoxically cultured mesenchymal cells. And, in terms of our opportunity to license this technology, we're currently talking with big cap pharma. We're talking to users outside of the US that are commercial with their cell therapy programs, where, for example, in our thermostem program, our brown fat program, we would do trials perhaps outside of the US for a subset of patients, take that data, review it with the FDA in order to get an IND approved, seeking a sort of an accelerated pathway within the FDA. So that's what we would intend to do on the clinical side. On the commercial side, we would look to license. We announced that we're in some meaningful discussions with a strategic partner outside of the US, where we would have a license agreement related to our brown fat program. They would commercialize the technology with their existing customers in their hospital systems and their clinics. And we're really excited about that prospect. We think the brown fat technology has tremendous application for obesity, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, respiratory health, cardiovascular health, early onset of dementia and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So it's a very powerful cell with 1,000 times more mitochondria than any other cell out there. It has great intellectual property. It's been published. We have great preclinical animal data to show the effects from an obesity perspective. So you're talking about a miracle cell with broad application that we're starting to get into humans by the end of this year and see where we go from an application standpoint from a commercial path.
One last question, because our time is about to wrap up. In a minute, 60 seconds or less, what keeps you up at night? I mean, it must be challenging to be at the helm of a company like BioRestorative. What stresses you out?
Well, that's a whole separate conversation. But and I believe stress is individualized, Tony. How you prosecute stress, how you absorb it. We think about at our company, which is really family based in the sense that we've been through a lot together and we've been at this for quite a while. We're all very grateful for the opportunity that we have to try to solve chronic lumbar disc disease, assist in the process of curing big, large growing markets like obesity and type 2 diabetes. So when you say stress, the only thing that worries us is not having the opportunity to be able to do that. And fortunately for us, we're in a great cash position. We have great access to the capital markets through our management team and our investors who have been really supportive. So, we really just want to get the job done. We want to prosecute it and execute our plan in the best possible way with credibility, with honor, and with all the things that are characteristically things that people don't talk about, but things that we really care about.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lance, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and have a great day, guys.
Yeah, you
Take
too.
care. Bye.
All right, that was Lance ALSTODT with BioRestorative Therapies. Moving right along, we have Gemina Labs on deck with CEO Brian FIRTH. He was previously at Swiss Precision. He helped orchestrate a $1.3 billion deal with Johnson & Johnson when he was with Inverness Medical, and he is with us today. Please bring on Brian. I believe he's in the studio, and there he is.
Good morning, Tony.
How you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks very much. Yes, thanks for having me along.
I hope I got all of your details right in that brief intro.
Yeah, right enough.
Well, there's a lot of background on you. You have quite a resume.
Yeah.
Anything that I missed that should be in there?
No, I think, you covered it. Basically, I've been in medical diagnostics, I think, for about 37 years. Although I'm an engineer by background, I started with things like NMR scanning machines, or making the magnets for NMR scanning machines. So I've done everything from big machines right through to very small point of care and everything in between, everything from drugs of abuse testing to cardiology to you name it.
Okay. Well, so how did you find your way to Gemina Labs? And talk to us a little bit about the company and how it differentiates itself from other companies in this space.
Sure, yeah. So I've been in diagnostics for like 37 odd years. I have been really fortunate to be able to be involved in some of the really fundamental changes, whether it be 700 megahertz, 900 megahertz magnets that are inside NMR scanning machines, through to home testing for diabetes, the first tests that, for diabetes, the first pregnancy tests, home pregnancy tests. So I've been involved in a lot of firsts, and I've been really fortunate for that. So I've been CEO for Swiss Precision Diagnostics, which shown in clear blue. I retired, essentially, was off to go sailing, and I got a call from an old colleague who said, look, there's a small Canadian company who have a really interesting stuff that they're doing with an interesting technology. They need somebody to look at their clinical strategy. Would you have a look at it? So I looked at it and rang back and said, you know what they're sitting on? He said, yeah. Now I should point out at this point, this colleague was one of the people who's named on the original lateral flow patent. And between us, we concluded that they were sitting on the biggest invention since lateral flow itself was invented. So I couldn't really resist getting involved, and the chairman at the time then asked if I would come in as CEO, and the rest is history. So
you were so intrigued that you put off retirement to come back.
Yeah, I'm not very good at retirement.
That's something. Okay, yeah. So talk to us a little bit about the technology.
Go ahead. Go on. Sorry, Tony. You can.
Well, I know that it improves on an existing lateral flow test, and what makes these improvements so significant? I really want to make sure our listeners get a hint of that.
Sure. So the way we would really, so we're a diagnostics technologies company. We make chemistries that improve diagnostics. We started with lateral flow, but we're now looking at molecular, and at some point we'll come back to diabetes and electrochemistry. But the way you would describe what we do, if the diagnostic was the car, we're the turbocharger. So we don't make the car, we make the turbocharger. So we increase performance. And the way we do that is very simple. We, at one end, in fact, our CTO would describe us as what we make is clever glue. We stick things together that shouldn't stick together. So if I use lateral flow as an example, when you make a lateral flow test, you spray antibodies on a line. And those antibodies catch your target, the antigen you're looking for, that's attached to a little gold bead. And what you want is your antibody standing in a very straight line, a bit like netball players all standing with their hands up in the air waiting to catch the ball. In reality, that doesn't happen. What happens is when you spray the antibody down onto nitrocellulose, some of the antibody is standing upright, some of it's lying on its side, some of it's upside down. So it's sort of almost like drunk netball players rather than professional netball players. And as a result, and there's lots of studies on this over the years, only about 15 to 25% of your antibody is actually effective. And that's really the root of the sensitivity problem for lateral flow tests. What Gemina chemistry does is it basically, you spray it down and it grabs hold of the antibody and flips them all up the right way. So they're all standing upright with our hands in the air. So 100% of your antibody is effective. So the bottom line, what we do is we make something that's like, it's in 3 parts. There's a top, middle, and a bottom. The top grabs hold of the antibody and the bottom grabs hold of your surface. So what we're able to do is tune the top to attach to anything, antibodies, bacteria, DNA, RNA, doesn't matter. And we can tune the bottom to stick to any material. So whether it be nitrocellulose, cellulose, graphene, glass, polymers, etc. So that's essentially what's the root of what we do.
Now you, Gemina really recently signed a deal with a global diagnostics company. Talk to us a little bit about that transaction.
Yeah, I can't actually mention who it is because actually the root of it is what we're doing with them is so significant for them. But basically, they're looking to put their improve the performance of their test. So they're using our chemistry. We'd be looking to use our chemistry inside their test to improve its performance. Right. So that deal we signed in January. We've got another 4 in the pipeline now. In fact, we sent out our first revenue check or invoice last week and received the cash in this week. So that's a major step forward for us. We've actually started sending out invoices.
Okay. Well, if you're ready and able to break the news, remember benzinga.com.
Yeah.
I would love to tell that story when you're ready.
Yeah, sure.
Give us a picture of the size of the diagnostics market and what the opportunities are there for investors.
Okay, so the IVD market, which is diagnostics as a whole, is worth about $100 billion a year, depending who you speak to. The point of care diagnostics, and the point of care diagnostics is the market that we make the biggest difference to. Right, point of care market is that those diagnostics that take place at the patient, where you take the sample, run the diagnostic, and give them back the result without ever leaving their site. Right, so home pregnancy tests, COVID tests are a point of care test. Anything the doctor can take with them and administer as point of care test. And the point of care testing market is about 43 billion. It splits into 3 big components. About 11 billion is lateral flow tests. About 9 billion is molecular testing, both of which we heard a lot about during COVID. The rest, and the biggest proportion, 23 billion, is actually electrochemistry, and really is sort of the diabetes self-testing market, which now is huge, by far the biggest part. Between molecular and lateral flow, our addressable market that we can actually get hold of is worth about $3.6 billion. So that's what we're going after at the moment, is about $3.6 billion.
And what are some of the milestones that Gemina is looking forward to in the second half of the year and possibly into 2025?
Yeah, so if we go into 2025, I think this year we start seeing we start generating revenue. Our revenue generation by the end of the year will be relatively modest, somewhere around $250,000, maybe even $500,000 dollars. Next year, though, that will be significant. That will grow up to nearly 4 million. 3.7 million, something like that, dollars, and then even more the following year. So they're the big ones from a revenue side. And from a capacity point of view, we'll be bringing on our new protein production plant later this year. In fact, towards the sort of second half of this year, that plant will come online. From a technology point of view, you're going to see us making announcements more about, we're looking at detecting TB in saliva and, being able to enable that. Various other sample types where our chemistry works. We're doing work in saliva, we're doing work in nasal swabs, we're doing work in urines, we're doing works in blood, but you're likely to see some other things as well, and we'll be announcing those as we go through the year. So there'll be a series of technology developments as we expand our licensable base and deepen what we license it into, in terms of both sample and sort of target. On the technology side. So there'll be stuff happening on technology, stuff happening with capacity and manufacturing, and stuff happening with revenues. So yeah, it's a busy year.
With your deep background and all the major companies you've worked for, What were some of the big lessons that you learned and took with you to Gemina? I mean, it seems like Gemina is really lucky to have you, considering all the companies that you've worked for, and you were so passionate about it that you came out of retirement to work with this company. Talk to us about some of the major lessons and what you're bringing to the company. Why having you at the helm it was so important for them?
Right. So I think there's a couple of things in there, maybe 2 or 3 things that are really key. One, it's very easy for small diagnostic companies or technology companies that are in developing diagnostics to get caught up in the diagnostic itself. I mean, the world is full of one-hit wonders, right? You know, guys have got one test, they're making 10 million of them a year, they're hardly making any money at all, and you know, they're never going to go anywhere else if you're not careful. So one of the things was really taking out of this, what is the base technology that could really go everywhere? Your biggest market is if you can sell to every diagnostic company in the world, right? If you could be the Intel inside of diagnostics, that's where you want to be. Secondly, that puts you in that sort of high margin reagents business, you know, high margin, high recurring revenues. It's much easier to manage the growth there. I mean, I was describing earlier on today, somebody saying, look, if you wanted to be a small diagnostic company and launch a diagnostic product, you would never get to, by the end of year 2, 100 million tests a year going out across Europe. You just would never have the distribution to do that. All the biggest diagnostic players already have that distribution. They're already, you know, and you know, people in some of the industries, you know, will do parallel launches in 57 countries at once. I've never come across a small company that can do that, you know, because it costs $9 million just to do the launch. You know? So that's the first thing, you know, really understanding what is it that is your unique proposition that you can monetize, right? And the fact that it goes in a diagnostic is not quite immaterial, but almost immaterial. Right, that's the first thing. The second thing is you can never underestimate how much capacity you're going to need. I mean, I spent a lot of time in diabetes and we could not keep up. Right, there's some very famous pictures of the factory being developed in Inverness in Scotland, where you've got, you know, a fully operating line, next line being commissioned, next line being installed, next building being, you know, next part of the building being commissioned, steel frame behind that, foundations behind that, growing like a big long snail, because you just couldn't keep up with the demand. If you've got something that really goes. So one of the things we've been looking at is like the way we operate is we're a bit like Coca-Cola. Although we license out the technology, we sell the syrup that is the Coca-Cola syrup. Really, that's how we make, you know. So we keep control of our IP by selling the syrup, and then the license goes on top. So we have to make the syrup. You can't underestimate, you know, how fast you're going to need capacity. You know, I mean, you know, already our original models, you know, one license deal, you know, one major license deal a year, you know, maybe raising to 2, etc. And already we've got 4 in the pipeline. So, you know, that's kind of the big thing. Don't underestimate what you're going to need in production capacity is for something like this. Probably 2 big things.
I'm curious because, you know, the Coca-Cola comparison is very interesting, but Coca-Cola owns the syrup.
Yeah.
And now if Gemina Labs all goes well in the next few years, is there potential for M&A? I mean, you have M&A expertise. You've been in that situation before. Could a larger player say, hey, Gemina is the target that we need. We want them on board.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that could easily be an outcome. There's two possible outcomes. Either we become as big as one of the big players, or one of the big players takes us out, you know, and decides they want us inside. I mean, that's almost inevitable. I mean, there are some very big diagnostic companies that we might be significant to, but there's also big players in the industry that are very like us, but just much, much bigger. So, you know, it's all possible. The thing that we have is something that's quite unique with the patents around our dual affinity binders. So we're in quite an interesting position.
Okay, so with Lance, our last guest, I capped off the interview with one question, which I always like to ask guests whenever I'm conducting a webinar or doing a fireside chat like this, whether it's virtual or in person. I always want to know, I want to get in the mind of a CEO and what stresses them out. You know, what keeps you up at night and how do you deal with that stress?
If my wife was listening to this, and I kind of hope she's not, by this time, she'd be pulling her hair and going, oh, God, here he goes. Because she always complains that my superpower is my ability to go to sleep. You know?
That's a good power.
Yeah, so I can go, if I lie flat, I can be sleeping in 15 seconds, you know, if I want to. But I mean, I don't sleep a lot, but you know, when I go to the bed, I can sleep regardless of what's going on. And I think that's probably, if anything, my superpower is being able to sleep regardless of what's going on around about me, and just shut it off, get to sleep, get recharged, and then start again. But I think if what you really see, right, what is it that CEOs like myself are sort of continuously worrying about? Unfair to say we continuously worry about it, but the big considerations we have to, one, have we got the capital strategy right to meet what we're trying to do? Are we building the right kind of capacities, both in production, both in R&D, both in, you know, business development? So are we, you know, human capacities? Are we building human and physical capacities that are appropriate for what we're trying to do? You know, and you know, is our strategy, you know, long term? Are we making ourselves a long term game, or are we making ourselves too easy to acquire too early? You know, so yeah, that would be probably for me. Yeah.
But it's all, at the end of the day, you got it handled. There's no challenge that you find, even on the macro level, hard to tackle.
No, I wouldn't say. I mean, there are some really tricky challenges, but no challenge is difficult when you've got the right team round about you. You know, and I'm very lucky that what we've got in Gemina is, you know, an R&D team that seem to be able to, you know, turn stuff around, and they're incredibly creative.
Sounds
you know,
like
we've got a capital markets team that's really beginning to step up to where our next phase is. So yeah, I'm actually really lucky, you know, and you know.
Let's talk about the talent bench. Is Gemina hiring?
We're always looking for people, you know, and we'll continue to look at people, because it's one thing, you know, contracts increasing, manufacturing capacity increasing, but we've got to keep up with that with, you know, people in all sorts of key areas. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Brian. This was a great chat. I really hope to continue our coverage of Gemina Labs.
I look forward to it.
Especially in the next couple of weeks. I want to cover that deal.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Great to speak to you, Tony.
Thank you, Brian. Take care.
Everyone. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Great chat with Brian Firth of Gemina Labs. Let's bring back Zunaid to close us out. How you doing, Zunaid?
I am a little jealous, Brian. It takes me about maybe an hour and a half to fall asleep. And maybe that's because of the blue light situation, and I'm still, you know, answering emails and whatever else. Very jealous.
Down, Zunaid.
I know. I promise it's not TikTok. I promise it's work at least, you know?
I will stop you on Slack. I promise.
Yeah, you'll get Slacks from me at like 2 a.m. But I appreciate it. That was a great conversation. Of course, you know, looking forward to whenever they're able to speak about the certain milestones that they're achieving with certain clientele as well. But man, you know, this, as we wrap up, the healthcare and biotech space is always it's two parts to it. You have advanced technology that's working, whether it's in terms of AI, whether it's in terms of Ozempic, right? Something that now the world is dealing with. And hey, what are the side effects? Is it really hurting you inside? But we're still also at the same time trying to cure and find treatments for, like, say, Alzheimer's or different type of cancers and, you know, things like that. So it's kind of like we're figuring out still the same things, but we're also testing new things and solving those problems as well. It's interesting.
Really, yeah. And our guests were perfect for a conversation like that. So thank you for having me as your co-host.
Absolutely.
I owe it to you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, man. We'll talk to you next time.
All right.
See, Aaron just wanted to kick you out. But folks in the chat, we appreciate you for hanging out. Elon, you're always engaged. I appreciate it. But hopefully you got some good insights and context from the companies that we brought on today. And as always, we're here to send messages and deliver what's happening in the company to you, the viewer at home. Always do your due diligence to see where it's worth investing your hard-earned money. And we appreciate you watching. A lot of other webinars coming up, so stay tuned to Benzinga. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe, and we thank you for watching.